representative of the United States for his statement. Now I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are grateful to Madam Nakamitsu for her briefing. The so-called chemical weapons dossier of Syria, which has been under the consideration of the Security Council every month, is something which has long been transformed by Western states into a mechanism for exerting pressure on the authorities in Damascus, a mechanism that destroys the structures of international cooperation in the realm of WMD non-proliferation. Chemical weapon stockpiles were withdrawn from Syria. They were eradicated under the oversight of the OPCW. The facilities of the former military chemical program have been destroyed. The verifications of the Scientific and Research Center did not indicate undeclared activities. Following the U.S. and their allies' missile strikes against these facilities, the inspections measures became futile. What has been purely ritualistic is the issue of the initial Syrian declaration under the Chemical Weapons Convention. The Syrian government has for all these years conscientiously been cooperating with the OPCW Technical Secretariat. It has been providing all of the information it has at hand. However, the number of so-called outstanding issues is only growing. The time has arrived where Damascus no longer has additional information to provide. All possibilities for shedding light on a host of issues have been exhausted, and yet they are artificially maintained on the agenda. The investigation conducted by the former joint UN-OPCW investigative mechanism has entered history as a blatant, non-professional, deliberately politicized mechanism. They were artificially tailored to meet a single goal: to taint the international reputation of Syrian authorities. Our attempts to bring the JIM's proceedings into alignment with the standards of the Chemical Weapons Convention were blocked with a heavy hand. The legitimate outcome of these manipulations, logical outcome, was the closure of the mechanism. And to this we should add that we have not yet heard reasonable explanations from the UN Secretariat as to how effectively the principles of confidentiality and inviolability for the archives of the former JIM are being complied with. This has been set out in its terms of reference. We receive information that there are unacceptable leaks of sensitive data. This needs to be immediately put to an end. Nor have the parameters for the operations of the OPCW fact-finding mission in Syria been remedied yet. The mission, which prefers to work remotely, basing its research on dubious sources from those deliberately hostile to the Syrian authorities. Attempts to reform the mission on the basis of the provisions of the Chemical Weapons Convention are met with stiff resistance from those for whom such a state of affairs is convenient. And at the same time, Damascus authorities continue to build new structures, of course, based on their own rules of the game, as a result of which the OPCW has of late been literally bursting at its seams. In June, as a result of through an absolute minority of member states of the Chemical Weapons Convention, what was pushed through is a decision vesting the organization in The Hague with attribution functions to determine perpetrators in chemical weapons use. This is illegitimate insofar as it runs counter to the Chemical Weapons Convention letter and spirit, and required the introduction of significant amendments into the text of the convention, which requires the consent of all member states. Moreover, there's a blatant encroachment upon the exclusive prerogative of the UN Security Council. Those who pushed through this initiative are now attempting to squeeze out budget funds to implement the attribution decision and to tailor the program of work of the OPCW to meet those ends for the forthcoming year. This is compounded by breaches of rules of procedure and stiff and significant pressure being brought to bear on participants of the Chemical Weapons Convention. The OPCW was initially an effective mechanism for international oversight in the realm of chemical weapons disarmament. As a result, it is losing its authority now and is being transformed into a mechanism for exerting political pressure on inconvenient countries. Against this backdrop, we continue to receive alarming information that the terrorist groups in Syria, in conjunction with the White Helmets, consistently prepare for large-scale provocations with the use of toxic substances. Our Syrian colleagues frequently provide this information to members of the Security Council. This information is also in the possession of Russian military personnel. For example, it is known that on 27 October, Islamic Turkestan Party fighters have brought from Mariet Almona 20 canisters with chlorine. Distilled canisters with distilled chlorine. 10-liter capacities with chlorine. The local residents reported to the Russian Center for the Reconciliation of Opposing Sides that the white helmet activists were seeking individuals who would desire to participate, who would be willing to participate in the staged incidents in exchange for receiving food. Such information is being received from Aleppo province. The white helmets have brought to residential areas of Azaz, Maria, and Chobarn. They brought canisters with toxic substances as well as professional recording equipment. The purpose of the provocation is clear: to shield violators of Syrian sovereignty and to provide a pretext for the new aggressive actions against Damascus, and to taint Russia's reputation, and to allege that Russia allegedly is preventing, is colluding with those who perpetrating heinous, with a heinous criminal regime. The heinous crimes of the regime, the egregious crimes of the regime. Our military specialists are monitoring the situation. What is in direct proximity with the demilitarized zone in Idlib province are machines for radar, chemical, and biological intelligence, with the assistance of which there will be an analysis conducted of the situation. The negative side of politicization of the issue of the former military chemical program of Syria is the lack of an adequate response to the genuine threat of chemical terrorism in Syria and in the Middle East region. The relevant initiatives with which Russia has advanced are being deliberately inhibited and obstructed. We trust, nonetheless, that life will force those who are doing so to abandon such destructive approaches. Thank you.
我感谢尊敬的俄罗斯代表的。
I thank the